Dear Jota, dear Weil, dear Irena, and Maxim, thank you very much for this past session. It's great, fantastic to watch and listen to all of you guys. And once again, thank you very much for donating your time. So we're not having a coffee break today, not today, now. So we're going to go on right to the next session. And after that, we have a short break. So we're going to welcome a couple of great names that we all know. Miguel Stanley, who is one of the persons who kind of inspired me inspired us to put up this meeting, to be very honest with you, because he was very active when all of these things started. Also personally, by driving his father-in-law, I imagine, to Ukraine, helping over there together with Wojciech Fej, who we also mentioned earlier, who's also maybe watching, I don't know. So Miguel, thank you very much for also being here, but also for inspiring me and many other people to be of help in one way, in shape or form or the other. Then we have Christian Coachman, who will join us, Kyle Stanley, and Nazari, who also is joining us from Ukraine. So thank you very much also for you taking the time, and I hope that we'll be able to have you with us. So Miguel, the stage is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you for organizing all of this, to you, the Haas family, and everybody on your team around the world. The work that you guys do, bringing all of these people together, Christian, is absolutely incredible. And we are all very grateful that you stood up, and you are one of the first companies that we know that actually stood up and was supportive of what's going on in the Ukraine. And for those that don't know, my wife is Ukrainian, and back in the beginning of this, I decided to take my father-in-law to the frontier, and immediately got in touch with Nazari. And Nazari, again, had been telling us about what was going on, and let us know what was needed. And we reached out. He introduced us to Wojciech. And Wojciech, if you're listening, God bless you and your family for everything that you're doing, and the entire people of Poland. Amazing what was done. And then something that the next speaker, Christian Coachman, has inspired me to do since I first met him back in 2013 or 14, was to share and to share and to share and to share. And if anybody in the world of dentistry has put their personal time and effort in joining dentists around the world through technology and through inspiration, has been the next speaker. I'm honored to introduce him. I'm honored to call him a friend. And many people don't know a lot of the magic that Christian Coachman does behind the scenes, connecting people, his humility in sharing knowledge, his thoughts, challenging people. He loves a good discussion. He loves a good argument. He's the first person to recognize when he's wrong, when he's learned. He's very rarely wrong, because he does his homework. And I mean, back in the day, when I was a young dentist starting, the Team Atlanta was the benchmark of interdisciplinary dentistry. And Christian is a dental technician. He started out as a dental technician at Team Atlanta, but he comes from a long line of dentists. He's a 5th generation dentist. I don't even need to read his CV because I've known him for a long time. I'm a big fan of his work. The founding father of the digital smile design. And he recently gave a lecture at Como for the Digital Dentistry Society. And he didn't show one case. Christian, is that what you're giving us today? A little bit of, that's a pity. If you could get to watch that lecture, it's amazing. All about protocols and the importance of systems in digital dentistry. Today, I'll be talking about 5 pain points of modern dentists and the strategies to overcome them. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most brilliant minds in the world, not let alone dentistry, our good friend, Christian Coachman. Stage is yours.
Wow, thank you so much, Miguel. Always amazing to be introduced by you. I wish I could convince all the Congress organizers to always bring you whenever I'm lecturing and allow you to introduce me, because you make me look very good, my friend. And thank you so much, you know. And of course, it's always a pleasure to do the same for you. And as Haze mentioned, You were an inspiration for us at the beginning of this huge problem in Ukraine. Your energy and how much you gave for the cause. Of course, we worked together in some strategies to try to help Ukrainian people as much as we could at the beginning and still today. And congratulations to Quintessence and to my dear friend Christian Hase for the initiative. I see so many friends connected here, and I'm very happy to give my little contribution. And let's continue to be aware of what is happening. Let's continue to be willing to help. This event is of course a big help, but we need to do so much more. And we will continue to do so. So Hase, please continue to count on me on any kind of strategy. And hopefully we will come up with some more ideas to continue to support this cause. And hopefully this tragedy will stop soon, or as soon as possible. But anyway, let's continue to move. Life goes on. I'm very, very happy to see my dear Ukrainian friends here, Nazari and Maxim, both connected. A few months ago, I was in Ukraine before the mess started, and it's just insane to see what is going on. You mentioned, Miguel, that my topic today is to talk about the 5, as we call the 5 pain points of a modern dentist. That is my goal, to go quickly over that. I was watching the lecture of my dear friend Wael, and super nice, very solid comments from Wael of this always controversial comparisons between doing things analogically and doing things digitally. And that made me think about actually adapting a little bit my topic into this discussion, into the way we used to do and the way we are doing now, and how digital is helping us to overcome some of these pain points that a restorative dentist goes through every day. We know that dentistry is very stressful. It's a very stressful profession. And I believe that among the specialties, the prosthodontic specialty, the restorative specialty is definitely the most stressful of all the specialties in dentistry. I'm very, very sure about that. And as a technician, I can even say that being a technician is even more. So when we restore smiles, there's so many details, there's so many things that can go wrong. There's so many things that are very hard to control, to systematize, right? That any help we can get in the restorative process, we should use. And of course, digital is here to help. Digital only makes sense if it's allowing us to work with less stress. So every time I talk about digital nowadays, I talk about pragmatism. You know, we can go on stage and show off on stage with amazing, cool, sophisticated digital slides. That's not my goal anymore. You know, the more I get older, the more I see the need to be pragmatic, to see realistic, and less show off. And we see that today still digital in most of the lectures is just a reason to show off. It's just a reason to make a cool lecture. And I really love people that are talking about digital in a pragmatic way. Also, when we see lectures about digital, we see a lot of people lecturing about digital that are not really using digital daily. So again, we are back into just showing off some technologies and not bringing realistic systems to the audience. Another thing that is very important, that is related to the lecture that you mentioned, Miguel, in Como, is the fact that you can only take advantage of digital when digital becomes a routine. And most of the people using digital, they're using sometimes, they're using once in a while. And this is when you get stuck in what I call the gray zone. The gray zone is when you are in between not being something and being something. In anything in life, we have this gray zone, this transition. And when we are in the gray zone, or in this learning curve, we have the sensation of waste of time, waste of energy, waste of money. And this is what most of the people are feeling when they're doing digital, when they're starting to do digital. So it's very important to understand that we can only really get the benefits of digital when we are out of the gray zone, when we go beyond the gray zone, when we were able to overcome the gray zone. So it's very, very important for us to not to give up while in the gray zone. And the only way to get over the gray zone is to be able to implement systems, not only buy technologies, not only do some steps with digital, but understand the meaning of complete systems. Complete systems is the key. And the problem is that we don't learn that in dental school. We don't learn that in congresses. People teaching digital don't usually teach about systems implementation. Systems are more important than the technologies. Systems are more important than the tools. First, we need to build systems. And after, we need to understand what technologies we want to buy to fit into systems. People usually do the opposite. They buy technologies, they don't understand complete systems. And then usually technologies are underutilized, many times sitting on the corner there, and are used in and out. Some days yes, some days no. And of course, then we cannot take full advantage. After building smart systems, complete systems, connecting the dots, understanding how the information flow will happen in a small rehabilitation process, the next step is to transform these systems into routine. Transform systems into routine. That means that we have the discipline not to give up, not to go back to the old way every time we have some trouble. That we understand how to troubleshoot every time we have issues, and not to give up on the vision of having a better system through technologies. It's so obvious that when we use technologies, we can build better systems, that when we see what is obvious, we get the energy to stick with our plan and not give up on every difficulties that the routine will bring to us. So it's all about systems and routine, systems and routine. If you buy a scanner and you really want to take advantage of your scanner, first, before the scanner comes the system. Second comes the strength of buying that technology and making it a routine and not giving up. That is, for me, the key. So what I want to do is it's almost like a continuation of the lecture of Wael. That's why I was happy to see the way, the topics that he was speaking. And I want to share my screen here to go quickly through the slides that I want to share. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. So very quickly, I want to share our experience as a complete digital lab. And I believe, the DST Planning Center is probably the only lab in the world that does interdisciplinary digital diagnostics, interdisciplinary digital planning, and interdisciplinary digital manufacturing, 100% only digital, right? So we do diagnosis, we do planning, and we do manufacturing for all our clients, only digital. There's no way out. There's no way out. I'm not saying digital is perfect. I'm saying that's the only way we work. And I'm saying that we do hundreds of cases every month, only digital, with doctors from all over the world. And all I can say from my experience as a technician, that where we are today is already better than where we were before in the analog world, with the highest quality possibilities in the analog world. A couple of things that we learned. a couple of things that we learned that we can do better now. And I just want to go super fast with this concept. First, of course, we are already completely analog model free, analog impression free. We don't do impressions. We don't do regular models. We are extremely, extremely happy with what scanners are doing for us with diagnostic models and with working models. The amount of errors that we can eliminate by not having to do impressions and models anymore is huge. This is like a paradigm shift. This is like a revolution. We scan uppers, we scan lowers, we scan bridges, we scan big cases with several adjacent preps. We scan veneers with no interproximal opening contacts. We scan everything that we have in terms of restorative dentistry over teeth. We scan implants, we scan multiple implants. The only situation that we still have trouble is, of course, edentulous arches with no keratinized tissue or very little keratinized tissue, mainly on the lower jaw. And on these cases, we still have to do anatomic, classic, high-end impressions, and then scan these impressions and go straight back into the digital world. Articulators, since we don't have impressions, since we don't have models, of course, makes no sense to use analog articulators. Absolutely no sense to use analog articulators, not because the digital articulator is better, but the digital articulator does exactly the same, with the same limitations of the analog articulator. Not better, not worse. But since impressions are digital, models are digital, of course, articulators are also digital, and we can use our same know-how from working with analog articulators, using them into the digital articulators. We can use, of course, facial scans adapted to the articulators. Not necessarily we can use facial images and do exactly the same. So very simple with an iPhone and with the smartphone and intraoral scan with a lab that understands digital, we can bring this information. Of course, we can already add jaw tracking devices and go to even the next level. And this is definitely the future of every restorative dentist. Of course, the cost of these jaw tracking devices is still kind of high. So you need to have a dental office that has a lot of restorative volume to make sense, but this is definitely where we are going. But still, even without this technology, just by using facial video, photos and an intraoral scan, we can have all the information. If we don't have models anymore, we don't have impressions anymore, we don't have articulators anymore, everything is digital. Of course, bite registrations also need to be digital. This is one of the best things that I see of having a scanner, is the fact that we can scan the bite and eliminate, again, so many issues, so many distortions, so many mistakes that can bring, that the analog workflow can bring to the process. So scanning bites and bringing these bites, maximum intercuspation, centric relationship, open bite, anything can be scanned in the mouth and transferred to the workflow. Facebook, I saw YL answering. I know, I understand that telling the reality may sound a little rough, since so many people are still attached to the old way. But I can say, I know that YL was trying to be very political about this, but I don't need to be political. I don't need to be diplomatic about this. There's absolutely no reason for a dentist to do Facebook today. I'm going to repeat, absolutely no reason, not even half a reason for a dentist to do a Facebook if the lab understands digital, if the lab understands digital. Faceballs are useless. I'm going to repeat, faceballs are useless and only confuses technicians if the technician understands 3D software. So no reason to do a faceball. You can completely substitute the faceball with smartphone facial photos in the software. That's it. That's it. That's all we need. We take a frontal smile photo, we take a profile smile photo, we adapt the STL to these two photos, we adapt the digital articulator to these two photos, and we have absolutely everything we need in the software to design functional cases, to change vertical dimensions, and to do the whole diagnostic planning that we need to design restoratively our cases. So this is for us obvious. This is every single day what we do. So all the mess that Facebos brought into dentistry because they were unprecise devices. Of course, if your lab doesn't understand digital, doing a Facebook is better than not doing. So if you don't work with the digital lab, yes, on big, comprehensive, complex cases, I still suggest you to do an analog Facebook. But if your lab understands digital, all these problems are gone. So no need for Facebos. What we do, knowing that opening the bite is very important, as you saw on Wael's lecture, we need to understand how to bring the maximum intercuspation bite into the software and how to develop a workflow that can help the dentist open the bite in a more physiologic way. So we know that opening the bite on the incisal pin is not ideal. So what we do is that we open the bite on the software, we design the case, we analyze with the dentist the most convenient opening to combine a restorative clearance, minimally invasive dentistry, and a functional, healthy design. Once we bring all these factors together and we understand the ideal opening of the bite, we in the software can translate this into an anterior appliance that can be printed back into the mouth and rescanned in the mouth to allow the dentist to capture the physiologic opening in the mouth. So we can start from the face, design the smile, we can understand and evaluate if the new design is creating functional challenges depending on what the face is asking. We can create more or less challenge in between the new aesthetic design and the existing functional scheme. And as we understand this on the software, we can bring the principles that we learned from our mentors and understand what is the best strategy for the case. In many of these cases, the idea is to open the vertical dimension, to protect the new design, and improve the functional scheme for the patient. So what we want to do is to protect this new restoration with the less steep protrusive inclination. So when we design the case with the face, we bring this to the software, and it's so powerful to analyze this in the software. We can identify a patient that can benefit from opening the vertical dimension for many reasons. We can open this vertical dimension in the software in a mechanical way. We can then compare this new opening with the new design on the upper. We can bring the variables and create this very nice discussion to identify if we're going to open 1, 2, 3, 4 millimeters for our restorative convenience. Only in the 3D environment we can see things in that way to allow us to make this better decision. We can define the design of the lower also with the face. Then we can eliminate the design, and on the same exact space, we can design this anterior jig that can then be transferred into the mouth through a printed anterior jig and be rescanned in the mouth. This is exactly what we do for all the cases that we are opening the bite. Opening the bite is something that every restorative dentist needs to learn how to do it in a safe way, in a controlled way, because more and more we are seeing patients that can benefit from the process of opening the bite. As simple as that. Adjusting the bite. Adjusting the bite is another thing that digital can drastically help us by allowing us to go beyond just the occlusal paper. The occlusal paper can give us the position of the contacts, but cannot give us the timing of the contact, neither the distribution of the load. And that's why we can use devices to improve the process of adjusting the bite. Since adjusting the bite is a key factor to create safety or to improve the longevity of our rehabilitations. We know that many of our restorative failures are due to lack of proper occlusal adjustment after cementation of big cases. So equilibrating a big case is an art, and it's a very, very difficult art because the existing instruments that we have are limited. So it ends up being a lot related to the intuition and the experience of the dentist. So using these technologies can help us identify the process of better equilibrating these big cases. So these technologies need to become part of the daily work of restorative dentists. Another thing that changes completely in our work with digital is the documentation process, the photography. In our opinion, intraoral photography is part of the past. Intraoral photography is not necessary anymore for high-end dentistry. The saying that to do high-end dentistry, we need sophisticated photography is not true anymore. I'm not saying that you cannot do fancy photography. We can complicate our lives as much as we want. We can still do fancy photography for marketing reasons, for putting lectures together, for putting articles together. And I still believe that intraoral fancy photography is a very interesting educational experience, but not necessary anymore for high-end diagnostics, for high-end treatment planning, for high-quality communication, patient presentation, case acceptance, and clinical execution. Intraoral scanners with true color can substitute this in a much better way. Not only because the 3D files have color, but because intraoral scanners are also high definition cameras that are capturing high definition images from all the angles of the mouth that you can access this at any time you want. So it simplifies a lot the first appointment. It improves drastically the experience for the patient. It's better for everybody. Explore your scanner with true color for intraoral documentation and eliminate the hassle, the stress of having to teach your team to take complicated intraoral photography. So intraoral photography is also part of the past. Very important. By not doing intraoral photography and doing intraoral scanning with color, we eliminate the problem of bad photography, bad angles. You know, every technician suffers with that, bad angles of photography and not having enough information. So you have automatically on the scanner these perfect photo protocols that you can have by doing print screens of the intraoral scanning. The same thing with the facial photos. The same way intraoral photos are disappearing and intraoral scans are taking over the imaging of the intraoral environment, facial scans will also substitute facial photos whenever facial scans becomes normal for every dentist. And this is going to happen super fast on the next few years. So facial scans and facial intraoral scans will substitute completely the photography in dentistry. And that's going to help us streamline the process of information to our labs. The same thing with handmade wax-ups. This is the other thing that disappears. It makes absolutely no sense to do handmade wax-up anymore in dentistry because digital designs are faster, are cheaper, are more beautiful, are more natural, are more integrated with the face. They can be exported. Digital designs can be compared to cephalometric analysis. They can be imported into any other softwares. You can combine your diagnostic design with ortho simulations, perio simulations, restorative simulations, orthognathic simulations. So handmade diagnostic wax-ups makes absolutely no sense in dentistry today. There's absolutely no advantage. And on top of it, to train a technician to do a good handmade diagnostic wax-up takes minimum 10 years of training. And to train a technician to do an even better diagnostic design on a software takes less than 10 months. So 10 years, less than 10 months. So absolutely no sense. And I can show you all the advantages if we compare a digital technician with an analog technician, all the advantages of going for the digital process of facially driven diagnostic designs, integrating aesthetics and function, evaluating this diagnostic design, eliminating the distortions with the face, eliminating or reducing the chair side adjustments, improving harmony with the face, improving the treatment planning process, improving diagnostics with a digital design instead of a handmade design. So it makes, again, absolutely no sense to waste time with handmade diagnostic wax-ups, all the measurements, all the analysis, and the whole integration that you can have with the digital design in comparison with a handmade design. And the final thing that, of course, completely changes with the digital workflow is the way we manufacture our restorations. For us, it makes absolutely no sense not to explore monolithic restorations, and this is definitely the future for us of the restorative process. Not only the future, this is the present. 80 to 90% of all the restorations we manufacture today that we deliver to our patients are completely monolithic, completely monolithic. When we do complete monolithic restorations, we can take advantage of what we call copy-paste dentistry. We create predictability. We keep mock-ups, provisionals, and final restorations exactly the same. We respect the plan. We respect the project. We can copy-paste the functional aspects of our rehabilitation. We can create situations where we can design a project in harmony with the face. We can create a diagnostic design respecting the face and respecting the interdisciplinary plan. We can translate this into provisionals exactly the same. We can guide our preps using the same technique that we learned from Galip Gurel, but now in a completely digital way. We can copy paste the design into the restorative design. We can translate this from one software to the other software. We can manufacture the final restorations exactly with the same design. And when I say design, aesthetic design and functional design. So copy-paste dentistry is a revolution. Changes completely the life of the restorative dentist, the technician, and the patient. It simplifies the process and it creates a precise process of transferring records to design ideal provisionals, to reduce drastically the amount of adjustments in the mouth, and to copy paste everything that was approved on a test drive phase, on a transitional phase, on a provisional phase, the trial, the functional and aesthetic test drive of provisionals, copy paste into the final restorations. And the only way to take full advantage of this is to master the process of monolithic restorations. With monolithic restorations, we're going to improve resistance, we're going to improve physical properties, we're going to reduce the number of interfaces, we're going to take advantage of copy paste, we're going to create better facial harmony, because on the software it's much easier to create facial harmony than in the mouth. We're going to create interdisciplinary integrated restorations, because these softwares can integrate ortho simulations, perio simulations, implant simulations, orthognathic simulations into the restorative design. We can be more replicable, more predictable, more consistent. We can depend less on sophisticated hand skills. We can reduce a little bit the human factor. We can create quality in a more affordable way. We can be more minimally invasive. By the way, the only way to really do minimally invasive dentistry at the highest level is through complete digital workflows. It's much easier to be minimally invasive. It's much better to prep neither less, neither more than necessary by using completely digitally guided procedures. The only possible downside of monolithic restorations is the optical properties of the restorations. And as I can be here showing hundreds of cases that we'll be doing, with amazing beauty, using completely digital monolithic restorations. You can see through these pictures how amazing these monolithic restorations can look if your lab understands how to take full advantage of digital. So my message here is that most of us are still in the gray zone. So don't give up. You know, when you look at your procedures, when you're still struggling when using digital, understand that this is normal because you are in the learning curve. Everybody, the few dentists that really went through the gray zone and are now functioning completely digital every single day, over and over and over again. There's not even one that regretted the process. There's no doctor that is working completely digital and saying, I want to go back to analog. And this should mean something to us. Don't give up. Stick with your plan. Go over your gray zone. Implement smart systems. Make these systems become routine. Troubleshoot the problems. And understand that when digital becomes the routine for you, you're going to have a less stressful job as a restorative dentist. That was my message. Thank you for listening.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It's amazing how much you managed to pack into that presentation, Christian. Overwhelming as always. I mean, I'm certain that if you could actually, given the fact, if you could stay awake for 3 days, I'm sure that you could speak for 3 days nonstop and still have more to say on this amazing transition. I mean, we are living in an incredible time for dentistry. And I think it's important that when we say dentistry, it's not just, dentistry is not the same. I mean, if you're in Manhattan or in rural Kentucky, depending on the demographic that you're treating, I mean, we've seen some of them, I've seen personally some really advanced digital practices in Kampala, Uganda, and I've been to some very advanced cities in America, and they're still working in the 90s. So, you know, we can't just say dentistry. I think it's a personal journey that every practitioner or practice wants to take. It's a personal investment. It's an amazing journey. A lot of questions are, where should I start? And we all know that what you've done with your DSD platform, I'm not sponsored to say this, but I'm a big fan. You've known that from day one. I use your services regularly. I pay for your services regularly because it really helps the very critical patient that doesn't really trust me, you know? So one of the things that I said in my lecture about your work is that it's like outsourcing trust. So for all of the dentists that are out there today that have difficulty and challenges in communicating really complex treatment plans that are in the tens of thousands of euros, you know, like Wael's case is extraordinary. I mean, that's a really expensive dentistry. And, you know, Professor Dr. Wael Ut is surrounded by an environment of, you know, incredible high quality. And I'm sure the patients that go to him expect to pay a lot of money because, you know, but let's go for somebody that's in Middle Africa or Central Asia or, you know, in a poorer demographic. How do they get Brazil? How do, you know, there's almost 300,000 dentists in Brazil, you know, how do they get to communicate to that one guy that really wants to do it? So being able to outsource that planning, treatment, communication and sequence is incredible. And I think you brilliantly exposed that by just using an iPhone that already makes you digital, having an iOS and being able to use platforms like that, I think is absolutely incredible. So with that said, we do have a unique situation here where we've got no questions. So it was just, I think, very clear. So I would ask you just one question. If I had to ask you that, the one thing, given the fact that you talk about monolithic. Everybody's monolithic, going monolithic. I know our next speaker, Nazari, is the master of monolithic. What do you think are the biggest reasons why there's so much obstacle in going fully monolithic? I'm not even talking about the digital. I mean, I personally still have some challenges with pure monolithic when the substrate isn't perfect. Like, for example, if I have a post and core, imagine I have a root canal tooth with the dark post and core, even putting a zirconia jacket on that. What would you say are the biggest challenges facing pure monolithic restorations moving forward?
I think that every good dentist likes to work with very good technicians, and very good technicians have been mastering the process of layering. So humans don't like to change. Even more when we are already mastering something, we fight against it. So it's normal, it's normal that people just want to keep doing what is working for them. And not many people have the habit of stopping and pragmatically analyzing why I'm doing this way and why I'm not doing that way.
Giving themselves time to learn. I think that's something, I'm quite passionate about. It's almost like an old wise man many years ago when I was beginning my career said, Miguel, you work way too much to ever be successful at anything. And I'm like, he actually said to be rich, but I don't like that. And for years, it's one of the sentences that stayed in. It's like so many dentists, we're always on the rush, we're always working, that we really don't have time to implement these new things into our workflow.
Yeah, so sometimes we do the same thing the same way for decades, and we don't stop to think, to challenge, to challenge the status quo, to challenge ourselves, to allow some space to reinvent ourselves. We are not trained for that. We were not accustomed to that. So of course that changes usually are slow because of that. We don't keep our beginner's mind. We become masters and we are stuck with that. But if we rationally analyze things, we start to see how many things we can change easily to make our lives more simple. I don't say this because I want to be fancy or I want to be cool or I want to be new. I say this because I'm in love with the word pragmatism. I'm in love with the fact that if I want to be fancy and cool and do sophisticated things, I do it as a hobby. But when it comes to daily work, I like efficiency. I like quality with performance, and I like to be smart. I like to work with less stress, and dentistry is so stressful.
Gotcha.
So how can we reinvent dentistry at this point, in 2022 and make dentistry a little bit less stressful? And there's very simple things that we can do that can impact tomorrow, Monday morning, and make our lives less stressful. And monolithic restorations is one of them. So we need to just find the labs that are mastering it.
Well, God knows you are incredibly consistent, hardworking. And listen, we do have some questions, but we're going to get into those after our next two speakers at the end of this session. So do stay connected, Christian, because people will want to ask you some more questions, and we do have them. Our next speaker is from the Ukraine, and there he is, the beautiful human being, Nazari. Naz, my brother, thank you for your courage. Thank you for connecting so many people behind the scenes, for your tireless efforts. And for people that don't know, back in early February, before the attack happened, you and I were talking, and you were driving your car. You said, Miguel, I've emptied my clinic. I am driving to Lviv, and I've been to your clinic in Kiev, the M Vision clinic, and it's just a beautiful. I mean, I know how much love and investment and time you put into building your M Vision clinic in the central of Kiev, and how difficult it must have been to have just and left. And I know that you are now in Lviv. No one's safe right now from what's happening in the Ukraine. My father-in-law is in Kiev today, and we know that two missiles struck the capital yesterday, even while Antonio Guterres was there. I mean, it's insane what has happened. So listen, I'm going to let you talk. I know you've got a lot on your mind and a lot to say. Don't hold back. All right. Don't hold back. Just go for it, bro. Ladies and gentlemen, I've known Dr. Nazari for many, many years. I've shared the stage with him, with Christian in Brazil, all around the world. He is best known for his work with microvision, using rubber dam like nobody else. His father is one of the most brilliant ceramists and is probably secret weapon. And he also has a very, very fantastic education center in the mountains in the Ukraine, where he trains doctors from all over the world on his amazing protocols. He's one of the best, most advanced, comprehensive cosmetic dentists and prosthodontists in the world, with an extreme attention to detail and digital workflows. And digitization is the topic that he brings today. Slava Ukraina, brother. Have a good one.
Героям слава.
You're good to go.
Okay, I started my video. Can you see me or no?
I can see you now. Just wait. Go on, share your screen.
Okay, just one second.
Okay, press play and you're good to go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you, Quintessence, Christian Haze, Christian Coachman, Miguel. Thank you as well for organizing all this, because what we are going through right now, I could only imagine probably in the movies. You know, I heard about the war only from my grandparents, and I thought that can never happen again in the modern world. But what I can tell you right now, that's probably none of us can completely be sure what's going to be happening tomorrow. Today we're safe, but tomorrow at 4:45 we wake up because we can hear the bombs blowing in the city, and we have to leave right away, you know, to save ourselves. And again, thank you, Miguel, also for doing lots of work to help Ukrainians. I know we were bringing stuff all the way from Portugal. It is highly appreciated. And I want to thank also all of the dentists who also helped us to collect finances to help Ukrainian people, to help Ukrainian army, and to find again this evil, and the evil's name is Russia. Let's be straight. So today, my presentation is going to be about the digital approach. I was watching all of the presentations from the morning, and I want to say that it's really amazing, very interesting. And myself, I already learned a lot from the speakers today. And the last presentation was from Christian, and I can say that's probably my philosophy, the way how we work is very close to the philosophy of Christian and his team. And probably my own digital dentistry started way back in 2011, when I met Christian first time and tried using DSD in my daily practice back in 2011 again. But time goes on and things change. As Miguel said, my father is also a dental technician, and he is actually, he was layering for many, many years. He's oral design member. So the person who likes layering and who was layering many years. But then we had really nice results. I mean, for us and for our patients when we were using analog dentistry. But what I realized that probably all of us know that the most valuable thing in our life is actually time. And when I saw my father working all the time, layering years after years, nothing was changing. I mean, and I think that if people are working hard, 10 years or 15 years later, they need to work less. But again, with the analog workflow, you have time limitations. The dental technician is busy from the morning till the evening. And I thought that my team, we had to change something. And we saw that the world is progressing. So we asked ourselves a question. So what should be the next step and why? And our goal was to organize our work the way that we can work less produce more, and still have time to enjoy life. Because even though I love dentistry, but I don't think that dentistry is the most important thing in the world, especially now at this time, we completely realize this. It looks like it's impossible to combine, to work less and produce more. How is it possible? I mean, in analog workflow, of course, probably it's not. But if we look to the digital workflow, if we look what type of technology we can use, like CAD/CAM machines, printers, intraoral scanners, of course, it's a completely different story. Now we can do more cases, high quality cases, but in a less period of time. But of course, using all this technology just looks easy on the slides. In real life, you need first lots of practice. You first need to fail many cases, practicing how to implement this technology, so later it will work for you. What I can tell about our team, we already heard from the previous speakers about the monolithic restorations. So starting from 2016, our team haven't done even one layered restoration. Why? Because again, I completely agree with Christian. If you always have a choice to do monolithic or layered, it means like you always can find an excuse to make layered. But if you put yourself in the limitations of using only monolithic, then you learn faster how to fix different problematic cases, how to combine different types of materials. And personally, I truly believe that the choice of the final material is completely responsibility of a dentist nowadays. If you look at the possible workflows, when we speak about the digital and the analog workflow, so if we look at the analog workflow, we can see that the steps, there are so many different steps, starting from impression, sending the impression to the lab. It takes time to be delivered to the lab. Then they pour the gypsum model. Then if they have the CAD/CAM technology, they scan with the lab scanner. If they don't have, they just start waxing up. Then they produce the final restorations. And after this only, they deliver back, and then you can bond. So asking different people around the world, how long does it usually take, this process, to make, let's say, a full mouth reconstruction? We usually heard the timing about from 10 to 20 days, depending on the lab, how busy is the lab, how busy is the technician. And especially it's problematic if the lab is really far away from the clinic. But when we speak about the digital approach, it's actually more like my case. I have a clinic in Kiev right here. And once I scan my patient, I send all the information to the lab, to the city called Ivano-Frankivsk. This is actually where I am right now in our other clinic. And here is our lab as well. And this is where my father works with his team. So just in 1-2 minutes, all the information is in my lab in Ivano-Frankivsk, and they can start producing a case. And the third option, of course, is to have a lab right inside of your clinic next door, because nowadays you all know that for the digital lab, you don't need lots of space. I know 15 or 20 square meters are completely enough for the digital lab that can produce all types of restorations, starting from the single crown, finishing with the full mouth reconstruction. So let's see how actually we work with full mouth reconstructions in our office, because nowadays 90% of cases that we are doing are full mouth rehabilitations done with a pure digital workflow. So every single patient coming to the office, we start collecting information. We take some protocol images. We scan the teeth of the patient. So we want to collect all the possible data from our patient, including the face scan, the intraoral scan, and of course, the diagnostic occlusal analysis. Even you can see in this video, I'm using also from the old school, the lead gauge, because I also sometimes scan right away in the CR position using the lead gauge. So here is the patient who came to our clinic. She was doing orthodontic treatment in another clinic. She had a wear of the upper and lower teeth, and we could see that she had really functional overload, because you will see later that almost on all of the teeth, she had cracks everywhere, almost 360 degrees on all of the teeth. So her goal was to reestablish occlusion and also to create beautiful aesthetics, because she just wants to have a beautiful smile. That's completely logical. She also came to our office with an implant in place. It was a Bicon system that I had to deal with, a very interesting system. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So we went on with the next stage. We scanned. Why do we scan? Because it works, it's accurate, it's fast, and no storage cost, no shipping. Very, very, very comfortable to work with. There is lots of discussion if it's precise or no. There are also many clinical studies that say it's really accurate and precise. Is it always accurate? Of course, no. It all depends how you use the tool. The problem of many people, I think, is that they are ready to invest into the technology, but they do not invest enough into a learning curve, how to use the technology. And that can be a problem because you buy technology, but you don't know how to use it properly, so you don't get proper results. And then you start blaming technology and you say, no, digital doesn't work. All the new stuff doesn't work. It's too early to use it. Again, first cases that we were doing, I didn't like the shapes. I didn't like the results. But after failing many times at the beginning, we created our workflow that is completely repeatable nowadays. So here we have the pictures, the intraoral pictures of the patient. We can also see that she has composite restoration, the old ones right here. Right here, there is some overlay. We can see caries and many other problems in her mouth. So I never start any type of prosthetic treatment if I have the teeth that have these type of restorations. So the step number one always is the restorative treatment. So I refer my patient to the restorative person, and the dentist who is also working in my office, he changes all of the composites that are present in the patient's mouth. Why? Because I want to be confident with the structure, with the teeth structure that I'm going to work with. Usually to change all of the composites, we need about 4 visits because each visit, my dentist is working with one segment, one quadrant, sorry, on one side, another side, and then another jaw. Only afterwards, when I have the buildups ready in the patient's mouth, and I know now they are reliable and I can start planning my prosthetic treatment for the patient, we go ahead with integrating of digital tracking device that is called Mojo. And I think that was really a missing link in digital dentistry. And myself, I'm using it the last, I believe, half a year. And it brought lots of useful information and help to my practice, because now, starting from half a year ago, all of the full mouth reconstructions, not 1, not 2, not 3, but all of them, I'm doing using this type of device. At the beginning, it was quite tough. Why? Because when you receive this much amount of information about jaw movement, about the mandibular movement, first, what you need to do, you need to know how to use that type of information, because previously you were not using it and now you have it all, and you need to realize how useful it can be in your office. And let's have a look how it works with the patient. So after, again, scanning the upper and lower teeth of the patient, we calibrate the special crown that we put on the head of the patient. We also calibrate the intraoral scans, and we integrate the models in the Mojo system. After this, I'm using the Optrogate to have nice access to the teeth of the patient. And we are fixing a special butterfly. I'm using Luxatin for that from DMG. So it's fixing the butterfly. And after this, butterfly is in place. And I can use this special camera to start the jaw tracking recording. So what actually can we record? We can record whatever we want. The protrusive movements, we can record the canine guidance, open, close. I mean, whatever you want, you can record. A big benefit of this system is that you can record not only in the envelope of function, you can record all of the movements outside the envelope of function. And this is what we usually cannot do with the other devices. Yeah, usually it takes about maybe 10 to 15 minutes to do all the recordings, and then I'm just letting the patient go. So let's have a slightly closer look, to the possibilities of this device. First of all, one of the most important benefits of using Mojo is actually a possibility to have the proper accesses. So you know how to properly position the maxilla and the mandibula in the skull of the patient. Plus, you know that the sagittal position of the maxilla is completely correct. Also, you know that the distance from the condyle to the molar is also correct, and the angle of opening is completely individualized for this patient. Another thing, we can record, as I said previously, all possible movements, including chewing. Chewing is one of the most important movements because just analyzing the canine guidance and also the anterior guidance, we are not able to replicate actually the function of the patient. And that's why even if we have some, I don't know, possible chipping or any other structural failure in the future, then we cannot check it. Because again, we just cannot check those movements. But here with the Mojo, we can really create a copy of a digital patient. We can combine, as you can see, the face scan with the intraoral scans and also the CBCT. We can clearly see how the condyles are moving. We can see if the incisal edge position is going straight down, or maybe interincisal point is moving to one side or another side. So now again, with the Mojo, we have a chance to completely create a digital copy of the patient without any type of limitations. After this, once we have this information, is being sent right away to the lab. You know, still starting from the first days of digital, I was doing pictures, the portrait pictures, to have the proper positioning of the head for my CAD designer. And even now, when we have the scanners, the face scanners, I still like to send him additionally the face pictures of the patient. So right here, as was discussed previously, we're using the different types of libraries, and the more libraries we have, more different smiles we can create. They are not copy-paste from a patient to the patient. So there is no signature like usually a dental technician can have when he is creating the new smile. And what I can say, when we are using the natural smile, natural shapes, my cases, just can speak about my cases, even though I love the work of my father, but both my father and me, we agree that using natural shapes are just beautiful. So there is no step back comparing to the layering process. Our position and our point of view is that it's opposite. It's a step forward because of the shape, the smiles now look even more natural. And as Christian already said, of course, waxing would take much longer time if you work with a full mouth reconstruction. With a digital workflow, they can do it. The CAD designers can do it much faster, and it's way easier to learn CAD design comparing to the proper wax up as it was in the past in the analog workflow. And once we created the proper design, after this, when design is done in the 3Shape software, I can actually transfer, my CAD designer can transfer this information to the Mojo software. And you remember, we were recording all of those movements of the mandibula. So now what we can do, we can actually recheck how the new design is going to work with all of those functional movements, not only anterior guidance or canine guidance like a gothic arch, but actually all chewing, opening, talking, smiling, and much more. Additionally, we can create a file that's called FGS. It's an STL file. And then we can use that STL file. It shows the border movements of the mandibula. And then once the upper teeth are designed, we can see where they can be crossing during the dynamic function when the mandibula is moving. You can see it right away on this video. So why do we need this? Because all of these tools help us to eliminate failures in the future. Can we eliminate 100%? Probably no. But can we make it as little as possible? Probably yes. After this, when the design is ready, we go ahead and we just print models. Nowadays, with the printers, we can print deprogrammers, surgical guides, preparation guides, provisional restorations. So the modern printers are very precise and they work quite fast. So once the models are printed using the simple Luxatemp material, I can go ahead and transfer the future smile to the patient's mouth as a prototype, just to show her where we're heading. And this is the stage where when I discuss the smile with the patient. Additionally, and because it's very simple to correct it on this stage, if I need to correct, I do small correction and then I just scan it and send to my CAD designer so he has a reference. After this, before preparation, I also received the screenshots from the lab so I can clearly see where I need to maybe cut the soft tissue. As you can see on the central incisor, I can also see the parts of the teeth that are sticking out right now comparing to the future final design. So that means if I want to insert what I call a working mock-up, so that's the final volume mock-up, first I need to equilibrate this part right here, because otherwise I will not be able to insert. So I can either equilibrate it before I insert the mockup, or I can insert another mockup that we call 2-in-1. That's the mockup that has two types of designs, the future one and the present one. And then we equilibrate these parts because we see how much they are sticking out. Then I can go ahead and start the preps. As you all know, we use microscopes in all of our clinics. All of the dentists are using microscopes because I believe this is the proper choice for the healthy position of work, for the great visual control and nice ergonomics with assistant. So I transferred the mockup. Before that, I did the equilibration, as I told you. And then with a depth cutter, I go ahead, I make first depth cuts because we don't want to prep too much and we don't want to prep too little. We want to create just enough space for our restorations. And as you remember, the patient had massive composite restorations that went into interproximal areas. That's why many teeth I was covering 360 degrees in this specific case, plus because of the big amount of the cracks. I'm a big fan of microinvasive dentistry, but again, we need to understand in which cases we go microinvasive, but in which cases we need to maybe prep slightly more to preserve the tooth life for much longer time. You can see on these videos how many cracks on the teeth of the patient. So carefully under a microscope, creating the margin about 0.2, 0.3 millimeters perfectly. Again, we can see also composite on the interproximal areas. That's why we open it. We go ahead and we finish the preparation. And then, again, I was using my kit for veneer preparation. I also did some soft tissue correction, just with the electrosurge carefully. Okay. And after this, I use my Doppler packer with 3-0 port in the sulcus and finished with a red burr preparation to finalize the margins. So this is how we finished. Then I went on with the intraoral scan. Again, the full coverage because of the massive amount of cracks, plus raising vertical dimension of occlusion, plus many composite restorations. Even though it's a full coverage, you can see on the picture, we preserved quite a lot of enamel in this specific case. And then they continue in the lab. They use completely same library. So me and my patient, we're not afraid that maybe the design is going to be different. That's we know that 100% that what patient saw during the mock-up stage will be completely same result that the patient is going to get in the end of the story. So no worries. What Miguel was saying as well about the materials and what I said, that the choice of materials, in my opinion, is responsibility of a dentist, because only the dentist sees, mostly only the dentist sees how those restorations usually look in the patient's mouth, because some of them maybe the value is not good enough, some of them maybe the transparency is not good enough. So I can tell you that in a full mouth reconstructions we use minimum 2 types of materials. Each full mouth reconstructions has both M-Press and also Emax CAD restorations. In this specific case, for example, we were using 3 types of materials. We were using M-Press, we were using Emax, and also we were using the zirconium because, as you could see, there was also 1 implant, and I always use the monolithic zirconium for the implant cases. So once the design is ready, we continue with the milling. Using my rolling machine for many years gives us a very predictable result, control result, and really nice surface morphology. The speed of milling is about maybe 30 minutes maximum per unit, so it's quite fast. And all the macro morphology we usually receive from the milling machine. What I can say, what's important when we're doing the milling is to realize that the burrs that we use in the milling machine always have to be maximum sharp. Sharper is the burr, the more precise will be the fit of the restoration. This is what we receive from the milling machine. And after this, my father finishes the case with a staining. And again, I want to repeat one more time that the last 5 years, almost 6 years, we haven't done any case with any layering. All the restorations that you can see maybe in the social media or on the presentations, they all are done with the staining. And what I can say that the most important, of course, is shape. Many famous dental technicians already told that many years ago, and I have to completely agree. If the shape of the teeth is beautiful, then the final result is also, and the smile is also beautiful. So then we go ahead and we are getting ready for bonding and isolation. And just a few tips about the steps. I go ahead, I put rubber dam. After this, I sandblast for 10 seconds, 27 microns. I use the orthophosphoric acid for about 30 seconds for a tooth, apply adhesive, use some air, and light cure for 1 second. When I put restoration in a place, then I clean, and then I go ahead for the final light cure. When we speak about the restoration, if we speak about the Empress, we go ahead with the 9.5 fluoric acid etching. Then we go ahead, we try in, we check the aesthetics, we show to the patient. We have to agree that it's nice, because what I always say, it's better to redo a case before you bond it than after you bond it. After this, we go ahead, we etch 35 orthophosphoric acid, we apply sealant, air dry, apply adhesive, do not light cure, just use some air. And then I put that restoration in place as a sandwich, remove all of the excess and bond it. Completely same story we repeat with the lower teeth. And why I put this picture and what I want to pay attention to. Again, please pay attention how many cracks are in the enamel in this specific case. When I have a patient who had the orthodontic treatment and the patient who is going to have a retainer from the lingual side of the teeth, and if there is a retainer, it's usually more problematic for the patient to floss in between the teeth. I prefer to break a contact right over here. I don't want to have a beautiful picture today of a prep without breaking the contact, and then in few years, 2-3 years, to have interproximal caries because the patient is not going to clean nicely with the floss. So the last, I would say 5-6 years, I'm very focused on the longevity of my cases that I'm doing. And I learned few rules where sometimes you need to be slightly more invasive, but to stay on the safe side. And this is one of those rules that when we put a retainer, I prefer to open a contact. So then I know that interproximal caries will not happen in that specific case for sure. And then we go ahead, same story. I received the monolithic restorations from the lab, and we go ahead and we bond in the patient's mouth. And with the lowers, with the uppers was completely same story. And this was few days after bonding. As you can see, soft tissue almost stabilized. One more thing that was left to finish was actually the crown on implant. And here is how we finished the case with our patient. The color that you see is a bleach 3 Empress in front and is bleach 2 Emax in the posterior zones. And when we finish a case, besides of taking the portrait pictures, I always also scan the case. I scan the face of the patient, because if anything happens to the case in future, we have completely those shapes and we can very easy to replicate any type of restoration. And of course, what's also great, these type of cases, a full mouth reconstruction like this one, we can easily complete in 7, maximum 8 days. It's a full mouth reconstruction. The small case like one arch can be easily completed in 3 days without any rush. what was almost impossible in the past. And here is how we finish with our patient. In the end of the story, she was super happy. I mean, the value of the restorations fit quite nice to her face. Quite often when people hear bleach 3, they think that, oh my God, it's probably too bright, it's gonna look fake. But again, look over here, they look quite fresh, but they don't look too fake on her face. And I think this is important. And the core of success in this case, of course, as well, is the shape of those restorations. If you are interested to learn more about digital dentistry, we also launched our online course that's called Analog versus Digital Dentistry. You can just go ahead to our website, that is mvision.pro, and easily register. And my conclusion, my message from this type of presentation is that digital dentistry is reproducible dentistry. Of course, again, not everything is so easy as we always see on the slides. But what we can say 100%, everything is possible to learn. When we were starting our digital journey, nobody could tell me if it's possible to make full mouth reconstructions. And for us, that was our main goal. But nowadays, we can say that having the proper team, having the great lab, it is possible to accomplish any type of case. And yes, I have to agree with the previous speaker. If I ask my guys now in the lab or my team now in the clinic, would they ever go to the analog workflow? 100% answer is no. There is no way back, because why would you trade something that is way more comfortable, way more repeatable, to something that was more difficult? Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer any questions you have.
Hello, Naz. Amazing as always, beautifully documented. I think we all really appreciate the effort that goes into this level of documentation. So we've got a few questions for you. And before we go in, I just wanted to say that it's just outstanding to see the level of consistency that you've been achieving over the years in your cases. I mean, and you know, always, like Christian said as well, very brave into integrating new technologies like the module and so on and so forth into your protocol. So it's incredible to see how consistent what you're showing to what Christian was talking about. It's really cool that, you know, it's like, it's almost if there's this master plan and everybody's adhering to it, but it's just amazing to see. So we have a question from Ayas Sheade, which says, in full mouth rehab cases, do you prefer preparation and cementation of teeth of both arches in the same sessions? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. When I'm doing full mouth cases, I always start with the lower jaw from the mandibula. I prep the lowers, I scan the lowers, and I bond the lowers. And only after that, I go ahead and I continue with the upper teeth.
So to be clear, do you start and finish the bottom and then start and finish the top, or do you ever prep the top and the bottom at the same time?
I start and finish lowers, and only after I start and finish uppers.
So that would mean that in a case where you have, you know, 28 teeth or 26 teeth or whatever, that you would do that in minimum 4 sessions.
Correct. I always say that for the full mouth reconstruction, I plan for my patient 5 sessions. Why? Because session number 5 is always the backup session. This is how I call it. So for example, if I'm bonding a case, and for example, I don't like 1 or 2 teeth, I bond all of the rest, and then I can just scan those teeth. And then I have this backup session number 5, where I can either correct something or I can finish bonding those 2 teeth.
I think it's really interesting, because I mean, I would say that we have the same protocol in many ways, but in some cases you've got those patients that might fly in or that have, you know, an emergency, and you have to get everything done in 1 session. And I would say that it's very difficult to do top and bottom arch at the same time and expect to have perfect occlusion in 1 go. What are your thoughts on that?
I have actually cases, and in the past I was doing like this, but why I don't do it, one of the reasons, there are a few reasons, but one of the reasons is that it's super tiring for a doctor and also super tiring for a patient as well, because to prep with the full focus, 28 units, I mean, I believe that the unit number 28 is not going to be the same quality as unit number 1. I mean,
I think that was the best advice of the meeting. So again, we'll have some more questions at the end of the session. You've got some people saying if they can work with your lab. So maybe you want to check in the Q&A sessions and reach out to these people. I don't know if your dad, with all the work you have.
they can work. We work internationally, so they can just contact.
Well, that's great. So, I mean, whoever sent that question, I know Dr. Nazari is very active on Instagram. You can find him at Dr. Nazari Mialuk on his Instagram and reach out to him and find out how you can work with his dad. So with that said, amazing presentation. Keep up the fight, brother. The whole world is with you. Thank you. Okay.
We will win. We will definitely win.
We will definitely win. Stay in tune because we'll have a more Q&A at the end and a little chat. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All
right. That was a brilliant presentation, man. I really do hope that everybody watching is glued to the screen. An amazing presentation from Nazari, who is now operating out of his practice in Kiev because of this horrific war in the Ukraine, and everybody's praying that that finishes soon. So with that said, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the next speaker, who is also a good friend and a brilliant, I don't know how to introduce Dr. Kyle Stanley. So, I mean, there's also a lot to unpack there. Dr. Kyle Stanley is from California. He's a true Californian. We have the same surname, but there's no relation. He's way cooler than I am. So Kyle practices in Beverly Hills in a really good practice. And I know it is because I've actually sent some of my patients there, and he's always been so kind and gracious, and the feedback is always incredible. He's a superb teacher. He lectures all around the world, both on implant dentistry, cosmetic dentistry. And if you follow his Instagram feed, you'll see that he's very thoughtful about the way he puts out his information. And also he's the chief medical officer for Pearl, which is an artificial intelligence company, one of the first doing diagnosis with AI in the world. They just got FDA clearance and it's about to blow up around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Dr. Kyle Stanley.
Thanks, Miguel. Really nice to see everybody, and a true honor to be here with so many good friends and, two of my mentors, Pascal Magne and Christian Coachman. So always difficult to follow any of these people, but it's a real pleasure. It's early in the morning, my time, so it's nice to wake up and be with you all. So I'm going to talk about AI today, and this is a topic that I think we hear about as consumers, and it's starting to work its way into dentistry. And what I'd like to do is demystify it and then show you really what's possible with AI. Like Miguel said, I am somewhat biased in the sense that I started an AI company. So please take that in mind when you're listening to me, that I can be biased, but I will try not to be. So what's a basic definition of AI? It is computer systems that can simulate the problem solving of decision-making capabilities of the human mind. So if you break down every decision that we make in our human mind, it's a set of binary micro decisions. And if you can find those micro decisions, and because they're binary, meaning yes or no, 0 or 1, we can then train a computer to make those same decisions. And when you think of AI, I think most people think of what they see in movies, which is like the Terminator, this self-thinking, always evolving machine that's coming back from the future to kill us and take our jobs, and killer robots. And that's really not what we're talking about today. That form of AI is something called general intelligence. And most AI experts think that that doesn't exist today, and it may never exist. What we're talking about today is called narrow AI or weak AI. This is a form of AI that is good at doing one thing, but it's very fast at doing that. It's very consistent. And oftentimes it can outperform what a human does. So in this example, there was an AI system that beat the best chess player. You may have seen an AI system beat the best Go player or beat the best Jeopardy player. So this system could beat you at chess every single time, but it can't make you a cup of coffee. It can't diagnose caries. It can't find a periapical radiolucency on a CBCT. So it does one thing, and that's all it can do, but it's very good and very consistent at doing that. So keep that in mind. We're talking about narrow AI. Although they're narrow in their, though they're narrowly intelligent, they're not narrow-minded. So what that means is if you have an AI system that is meant to recognize an apple, 10 years ago, it could recognize an apple, but it had to be a red apple. It had to have that perfect little stem, that perfect little leaf, the archetypal shape of an apple, and it had to be on a monochrome background. Now, today, an AI system using computer vision could recognize an apple if it's rotting on the ground, cut in half, on someone's head, upside down, blue, all of these different ways. So they have become very dynamic in how these AI systems are able to recognize different things. So very brief history. When I first got into AI about 6 years ago, I didn't realize it started in the 1950s. It really had what they called an AI winter up until, personal computing. So personal computing came along and we had processing speeds that doubled every 18 months and halved in costs. You had digital data happening. I mean, think about our practices. Think about Naz's practice, right? All the digital data that he has. There were three things that we needed and we didn't have until really about 10 years ago. So we needed data-driven algorithms. This is the back-end difficulty of AI, and we'll get into this. We needed processing power, high power GPUs. And as you know, if you have, a phone, digital phone, if you take the last iteration of the phone, the newer phone is so much better, so much faster. Images are so much better. Video is better. Technology is advancing so quickly that this processing power is really important. And the last thing is big data. So even if you had data-driven algorithms, processing power in the 1990s, we hadn't digitized the world yet. So we didn't have the data. You can't look at this in an analog fashion. So now we have big data. So in dentistry, you can think about this as all of your intraoral scans, all of your digital radiography, all of your practice management system data, your notes, face scans, ModJaw, PIC camera. I mean, every digital asset that we have, if we have enough of it, we can analyze it and try to find trends. So many people think like, well, AI is the future. Like, I know AI is the future, but it's the future. And I'm here to tell you that whether you know it or not, AI has already creeped into your world. So when you think about predictive analytics, very rarely do you get in your car and just drive somewhere without putting on Waze or Google Maps or, Apple Maps or one of these. And, this has become part of us. And we just think, oh, well, yeah, we just put it in. You're using predictive analytics and AI, previous information, high power processing that is telling you the best way to go based on previous history. How was traffic yesterday? How was traffic a year ago on the same day at the same time? So it's predicting this for you. Similarly to getting bank alerts, right? So, the bank knows more or less what you spend your money on. Now, if all of a sudden someone buys something super expensive from a retailer that you've never used, it's going to give you an alert. There's not a person analyzing that. This is actually AI. And then natural language processing, another type of AI. If you turn on your phone and say, hey, Siri, how many liters are, in the ocean or something. This is Siri recognizing natural language, processing that, and figuring out what you're saying. And very cool, they have this, in every language with different accents. It's gotten really, really good. Also things like Amazon, right? If you have an Amazon Home or a Google Home, and you say, lock the front door and close the blinds on the back patio. It's recognizing what you're saying and doing an action based on it. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today is a type of AI called computer vision. Computer vision is one of the biggest forms of AI that's going to make a difference in dentistry. So computer vision is already here. If you pick up Snapchat or Instagram and you put a filter on your face and it's, shoots a rainbow out of your mouth and makes your ears grow big, that's computer vision. The computer's recognizing where your eyes are, where your nose are, where your ears are, where your cheeks are, and then doing something fun based on that. It's being used in cars. I'm a big car guy, and it's being used like in Teslas and really every type of car now that has intelligent cruise control. It's recognizing where the other cars are, if there's people there, if there's lines in the road, etc. Face scanning for safety, finding people that are on the run. It's already being used in our world. So whether you think AI is here or not, you've been using it. If you have a new iPhone and you pick it up and take a picture for one of your patients, the iPhone takes 8 photos before you take your first photo, picks the best pixels, and that's why the images have gotten so much better. Now the camera's gotten better as well, but the form of AI is making your image better. So I really love this quote. It says, part of the inhumanity of the computer is that once it's programmed and working smoothly, it's completely honest. And unfortunately, we can't say that about every human. So what I love about AI is it brings the truth into dentistry. Now, good or bad in this case, it's not on anybody's side. So if you're doing good work, it's going to be on your side. If you're doing bad work, unfortunately, it's going to know that. So the strengths of AI, it's really good at pattern recognition. So if I came to Miguel and I said, look at these 100 sets of radiographs for patients and tell me the trends, he may be able to do it. Now, he's not going to remember every image, and it may take him a long time. And, he has to go to the restroom and he has to eat and he has to sleep. But then what if I came to him and said, okay, here's 1 million patients. Analyze all the trends. Find which patients, have caries in the cervical region, or which patients have caries interproximally, or which patients have periapical radiolucencies in the mandible as opposed to the maxilla. It would be impossible, right? Impossible for any human to do that, but the computer can do that fairly well. Now, what if I said, okay, here's 1 million images, Miguel, and also here is all of the patient's medical histories. Here is the cross-section of their masseter. Here is their face height. Here is their diet. Now try to find all the trends. I mean, like, your brain would explode. It's something that we, us humans, cannot do. We're not good at interpreting multi-dimensional and multivariate data, but a computer is very good at this. It's very good at being consistent. We're going to get into that a little bit later. You can scale it. Like I said, there's zero downtime. The computer works all day, every day. It just requires, a lot of power and creates some heat. And it can do things repetitiously, which as humans tend to not be very consistent at things. Now, the weakness is it's expensive. It's dependent on high quality manual selected data. I think there's a misconception with AI that you just take a bunch of radiographs and you put them into a computer and the computer figures out where the caries are. which is not the case. You have to pay dentists around the world to painstakingly mark all the caries. And then you have to decide, okay, which dentists are good, which ones do we agree with? Then you put that into the computer, and then you have to train it over time. So it's not this black box idea. It really takes a lot of high quality data, manually selected images before you can get some type of a model out of it. It requires careful, accurate training. Like I said, energy consumption. It's not great at edge case performance, which us humans are very good at, usually. And it has predefined inputs and requirements. Now, I don't blame the computer for that, because I also have predefined inputs and requirements. You know, you speak to me in English, I understand you. You speak to me in Portuguese, I mostly understand you. But you speak to me in Chinese and I don't understand. When you weigh the impact, I think we have a lot of positives with AI. So let's look at the history of modern dentistry before we go into my vision on where I think AI will take us. All of the big changes in dentistry have come from huge innovations, right? Dr. Brannemark with dental implants, digital dentistry, digital smile design, huge innovation that has really changed dentistry. And I think that AI is that next big innovation that's going to make the biggest change. And my vision for AI is that it'll really be a utility across the dental field within 10 years and probably more like 5 years. And when I say utility, I mean like having water or electricity. It's going to seem so silly to many of us when we look back, even in 5 years, and say, do you remember when we used to look at radiographs just by ourselves? I mean, that's happening in medicine right now. Very rarely now in a modern hospital do you have a radiologist looking at a chest radiograph or a breast scan without the assistance of AI. It's just something that has become normal, just like, you know, how Naz and Christian, how, you know, digital dentistry is just, it's just normal. It's just what we do now. That is where AI is coming. So the problems that AI solves, we'll go deep into all of these, but dentists are inconsistent. I'm sorry to tell us, we have to accept and bring our egos down. Digital dentistry has big untapped potential, and we have a lot of bottlenecks and inefficiencies in dentistry. So let's talk about inconsistency. So here's 2 studies. The one on the left was done by the Dental AI Council. Now what we did was we had a full mouth series of radiographs from a patient, and we went to 136 doctors around the world. And we asked them to diagnose this patient and treatment plan. So if there's caries, if there's bone loss, if there's open margins, if, you know, calculus, whatever. And what we found was kind of crazy. Like, so when you take one of the upper molars, 50% of the dentists said, yes, there's caries, 50% said no. When you looked at recurrent decay, it was 60-40 on that tooth. On the whole mouth treatment plan, so, you know, the patient comes to me, and my dad is a dentist, my brother's a dentist, like many of the speakers here. Imagine you come to me and I tell you, for your whole case, it's $300. Then you go to my brother in another city and he says, it's 15,000, around 15,000. And let's say you go to my dad and he says, it's 36,000. What? As consumers, that is difficult to understand. How can the diagnosis and the treatment plan be so vastly different? Now let's look at the study on the right. This was done by Pearl. We had 3 dentists. One was an oral maxillofacial radiologist, and the other 2 were general dentists. And we asked them to diagnose caries on around 9,000 PAs and bite wings, periapicals and bite wings. And what we find is that they only agreed on caries in the images 4% of the time. You know, one dentist found caries in 5% of the images. One dentist found caries in 9% of the images. One dentist found caries in 16% of the images. Who's right? They all think they're correct. So this is that inconsistency. Now, even we're inconsistent with each other for sure, but we're even inconsistent with ourselves. So if you show me a full mouth series radiographs now, and then you show me in 3 months, I may think different things depending on, did I have coffee that day, or did I sleep well, or did I eat well? Did I have an argument with my wife? Is my son behaving well? Was there traffic on the way there? That's difficult for patients to understand, and it's not great for patient care. So the untapped potential that we have, we are uniquely seated to really have AI excel in our practices because we've spent the last 20 years digitizing our practice. We now have digital radiographs and digital intraoral scans and digital charting and mod jaw readings and face scans and digital smile design. We have all this data, but we're not doing anything with it, right? Our clinical notes don't talk to our intraoral scans, and our radiographs don't talk to our clinical notes, for example. We are uniquely seated to really benefit from this untapped potential that we're all sitting on. Now, the inefficiencies in dentistry, they are vast. They are vast. Digital dentistry has helped with that, but you have little things like you're prepping a lower molar, let's say, and you take an intraoral scan. You look at it, say, yeah, it looks good. Send it to your lab, whether it's in-house or not, and the lab says, I can't see the distolingual margin. Usually we say, well, just guess, figure it out, right? So it comes back, we take the provisional off, we try it on. It doesn't fit. There's open margin, there's overhang, it's short. So now we have to re-prep the tooth. We have to repack cord, let's say. We have to re-inject the patient, make a new provisional. We just lost all of that overhead time. Now we're making half of the money that we were making on this restoration, for example. What if we had some feedback loop that as we're taking the scan, it's saying, ding, 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 distolingual margin, unavailable to be fabricated. So right then, when the patient's numb, you've already packed cord, you just re-prep that area real quick. You get approval, now you can go forward. Because the problem with us dentists is we don't have a feedback loop most of the time. Many of us work in silos by ourselves. We don't oftentimes work in groups. That's changing over time, which is good. We need that feedback, and AI is here to be that feedback. So we're going to talk about how it impacts clinical care, how it impacts our business of dentistry, because as dentists, what's different about us, and I think what's great about dentistry, is that many of us are entrepreneurs. We own our own businesses, unlike many doctors who work in healthcare and in hospitals. So that's what's unique about us. So let's look at what AI can do. AI can add an extra layer of intelligence to your radiographs. So when you look at a radiograph now, and you see different forms of splotches, different forms of gray splotches here. So I'd like everyone to kind of look at here and say, what do you see? Do you see interproximal caries? Do you see calculus? What kind of restorations do you see? It's maybe easy for us, but now adding in this extra layer, now you can look at things and say, okay, well, we have this carious lesion, and this is being done all by the AI. Before you walk in, your assistants can take the radiographs. You can walk in, already have areas of interest that will draw your eye to. So when you walk in, you're less likely to miss something. Now, in addition, being able to build trust with the patient, saying, I don't just think you have caries here, but a third-party AI system that's trained by thousands of doctors around the world thinks that you may have caries here too. I'd like to take a look in your mouth and check this out. But also when you're having that conversation with the patients, you say things like, normally you see this little, there's like a little gray area here. They're going like, what are you talking about? You put a box around it and then you say, you see that gray area? It's gone through that purple part. Now that purple part, that's the enamel, that's the hard area of your tooth. It's going into the dentin. See that green kind of teal area? That's the soft part that's more sensitive. So you can have this intelligent conversation with the patient because of what is happening in the radiograph and adding this extra layer of intelligence to your radiograph. Now that's more for real-time detection of pathology and disease, but we can also use AI to do predictive models to say, Mrs. Jones, we recommend doing scaling and root planing because you have calculus and you're starting to have some bone loss. And, she says, well, I don't really want to do that. We can then use predictive models to show what her bone loss will look like in 10 years based on millions of patients just like her and on her previous radiographs to give her some insight into what's happening and to be able to predict what's happening with our patients. Not only that, coming soon, we'll be able to say, okay, not only did we find caries in the radiographs or in the CT scan or in the intraoral scan, but maybe you may want to do this, or this type of restoration and start making recommendations based on research, based on the history of your practice and what works best in your hands. So not only can we find pathology, then we can recommend treatment based on all the research that's ever been on PubMed. And then we can recommend even a specific material to use in a specific case, all based on what has the best overall clinical success. Individualized care, I know this is something that many of the panelists are very big on. As dentists, we're very reactionary, right? We wait for caries to happen. When it happens, we fix it. I would like to get to a point where we can be paid for keeping patients healthy and not only just being reactionary and not only focusing on the mouth. With Christian and some of the other panelists, we've done things with the Oral Facial Club where we involve, from an aesthetic standpoint, the entire facial team, orthodontic, plastic surgeons, orthodontists. But with individualized care, what we can also do is bring the doctor back in or bring us back into healthcare. It's crazy that we separated from healthcare 100 years ago, but we know from a lot of research that periodontal disease is connected to brain function and periodontal disease is connected to heart disease and diabetes. We have some of these connections. What AI can do is bring connections we may never have thought of. So maybe you're a 47-year-old male and you have 2 to 5 carious lesions in your mouth and bone loss of 1 to 2.23 millimeters. Maybe you're more likely to have a hip fracture when you're 75. I mean, we don't know, but AI is the only thing that can analyze all of this data, all this multivariate data, and make these connections. And I'm very excited to bring dentistry back into medicine because it's wild that we're not connected. And it's like, oh yeah, you just do the mouth and you just do the body. I mean, it's crazy. Having this multivariate data analyzed will be able to bring us back and bring us the respect that we deserve from our medical colleagues. So a few other areas that AI has been used in laboratories. It's been used really for quite a while now for figuring out ideal shapes for teeth. Now, that isn't as good as copying, as you've seen in 2 of the previous presenters. AI for consumers, I'm really excited about this one. So this is a toothbrush that tracks how good you're brushing your teeth, how often you're brushing your teeth. Are you missing areas? What's good about that is, as you know, many of your patients are not good at brushing their teeth, and this can help them. what's better about this is from an insurance standpoint or a government-based care standpoint, it incentivizes people to do the right thing. So for example, in the US, I may pay the same amount for my medical insurance as someone who smokes, drinks, doesn't exercise, and is overweight. Something is wrong with that, right? I don't smoke, I don't drink, I exercise, and I'm not overweight. I should pay less because I'm at less risk. This, again, brings the truth into what's happening in dentistry. AI for teledentistry, there's companies like Dental Monitoring, which is using AI to analyze traditional photos and intraoral photos, doing really, really cool stuff. If you're not familiar with what they're doing, definitely check them out. And then AI for practices. AI for practices is multifactorial. There's so much we can do with this in our practices. Evaluate practice-wide patient health. Are your patients getting healthier over time? We don't really have a way of doing that currently. Looking at flagged or missed unscheduled treatments or unidentified treatments. So if you have a patient that's coming in today and you're planning on doing, an upper premolar tooth surface filling, but you missed an interproximal lesion on the opposite side, the AI will say, hey doc, check out this area. You may want to diagnose something. So that when you're in the patient's mouth, you're already there, the patient's there, they took off of school or work or got childcare. If you can do that the same day, it's good for your business and it's good for the patient's healthcare and it's convenient for them. And the AI is just going to give you a little bit of insight. Hey doc, check this area. It's not making a diagnosis for you. It's here to say, check out this area. You're the doctor. You make the decision. It can identify specialty care needs. So, it's really common now that general dentists will bring in specialists to work in their practice once a week or once a month. And what I've found in a lot of these practices is they have a hard time diagnosing enough patients to keep these doctors busy. And what AI can do is go through and look at every radiograph in the last 18 months for your active patients and find patients that may need specialty care, whether it is oral surgery, like in this case, looking at impactions, or whether it's endo or looking for patients that have potential hopeless teeth, that have root canals and periapical radiolucencies. Now, of course, you can redo the root canal, redo the restoration or do an apicoectomy, but it's going to say this may be a possibility for an implant or an extraction, for example. You can assess the diagnostic validity, especially if you have multiple doctors in your practice, and ensure that there's a quality of treatment that's happening, some form of a baseline, because when you add together humans and AI, you get a synergistic effect. So the human may be better than the AI in some forms, and the AI may be better than the human in some forms. But when you add them together, you really get a synergistic effect happening. You can also prevent over-treatment, reduce chair time. How not to use AI in the clinical care? Simply deferring to the decisions. Simply saying, the AI says there's caries, we got to drill. No, this is an assistive tool. It's here to be like an extra doctor in your practice that is giving you insight. You're still the doctor. You still make that final decision. I wouldn't take disagreement with the AI personally either. You're the doctor. You can override anything, click off of it. Nope, I don't agree. You can analyze clinical performance. So let's say you run a practice and you have multiple associates in your practice. You can go through and say, which one of my associates are missing the most things, or who is the best treatment planner? And it's based on data, not just based on your assumption. You can look at managing clinical staffing. So this was an interesting one. Is we had a group of practices that came to us and said, you know, one of our doctors in a certain practice, they're really bad at diagnosing periodontal disease. We have a, you know, average, you know, some say it's 20%, some say it's 40% of how many of your patients have periodontal disease. And they just look at their practice management system. How many of our patients have periodontal disease? When we look at the actual radiographs and analyze what's happening in the radiographs, what we found was that this specific practice had less patients with bone loss. It was just a different patient population. Maybe they were more educated, or, you know, they had better access to care. So what they did in that practice was take away one of their hygienists and put it on another practice that had more bone loss, more periodontal disease, based on data again. So allowing you to analyze your staffing based on data and not just based on an assumption. From a business intelligence standpoint, you can optimize scheduling and chair time based on anticipated what's happening in your practice. So if you go here, let me just go. If you look on this day, the AI is finding who needs radiographs. You can see the purple and the pink based on, you know, in this case, what's recommended by the American Dental Association. So it lets your staff know who's due for radiographs. And then if a patient is blue, it's going to say that they have some type of opportunity. There may be something that is missed in this patient or just wasn't diagnosed. So here, there's a little notable margin, open margin. For those of you that follow zero bone loss concepts, if there's an open margin like this on an implant, usually that means that there's excess cement. So you may want to go take a look at that. When you look at what's happening in the restorative, oh, look, there's a small, very small potential caries here. So if the patient is coming in for a cleaning and you're going in to do an exam, you may want to go in there and check that area. Maybe we need to do a small restoration or, you know, redo the crown or whatever it may be. But it's giving you an insight, giving your staff members an insight on what's happening that day so that you can be ready for this patient. You can go in, have a caries cassette ready, you know, make sure you have assistant time, make sure there's doctor chair time. If you want to check their insurance to see if anything's going to be covered, you can do that beforehand. So if the patient says yes, and this truly is caries, then you can proceed right then and there. Evaluate investment in equipment based on anticipated clinical utility. So, you know, if you're going to buy some big laser for one specific treatment, how many of those patients do you have? Are you going to be able to make that big investment worth it? Increase bidirectional referrals. We've seen this oftentimes, you know, restorative doctors, they look at mouths differently than surgeons. Surgeons look for surgical procedures. Restorative doctors look for restorative procedures. And both of them can be very myopic in the sense that I'm looking for fillings and crowns. I miss the impacted teeth. I miss the opportunity for, you know, implants, or I miss the opportunity for periodontal surgery. And in the same way, the surgeons can miss those small interproximal caries. So the AI as an assistant can be there to help you find these patients and treat them better. This is a very interesting one, is appraise practice value. When I bought my practice with Matt Najad, who many of you know, my partner, you know, we looked at like 10 charts and we said, okay, here's $1 million. You know, it's so crazy how we appraise practices now. Now you can appraise practices, if they're a digital practice, by looking at every chart, every radiograph, finding trends, seeing if there has been fraud and you don't want to have any risk associated with this, seeing if there's still available treatment to do. You know, I've heard of some people buying practices and there's no treatment left to do. Everything's been done. So this really can give you a true value of a practice. And how not to use AI in these ways. You know, I think it all relies on relying, or it all goes back to relying solely on the AI. You don't want to just say, I'm going to buy this huge thing just because the AI says it's right, or I'm going to look at this provider in my practice and hire them or fire them just because of the AI. It's all about finding your balance with AI. It's all about utilizing your human intelligence with the artificial intelligence, because together they have this synergistic effect. And I like to explain this with cars, is that, humans are okay at driving, but we make mistakes. A true self-driving car doesn't exist for under $500,000. Don't let Tesla let you think that. But you take together the self-driving AI-assisted driver, and you can reduce 80% of the accidents, because it keeps you in your lane. It knows how far you are from the car in front of you, the car behind you. The thing that I love about it is you're still the human. You still have the autonomy to override the system, right? You have the accelerator pedal, the brake pedal, and the steering wheel. And that's how it is in dentistry and medicine. The humans are in charge, but you have this extra layer that's helping you reduce your risk, increase your business, treat your patients better, increase your standard of care. And so, if you're interested in any of this, you can take a screenshot of this. You can contact me on Instagram. It's just Dr. Kyle Stanley, Dr. Kyle Stanley, and I'd be happy to explain what we're up to and what I think is coming in the future. So thank you very much.
All right, Kyle, as always, impressive, beautiful presentation, by the way. A lot of work into that. You can see it's also consumer facing, which is quite interesting. So it looks like it's not just designed for the millennial.
It's different than my previous ones, yes.
The millennial dentist, but also to patients, which is beautiful, because I think we're all in this together. Amazing. Listen, I'm getting indication here from Christian Haas that in order to keep on time, we are going to we're going to take a small break and jump into the next session. I think your presentation was absolutely explicit, beautiful, wonderful, necessary. I have some questions, but I'm going to reach out on Instagram like everybody else, because I know you're very, very active that way. Yes. Kyle, thank you so much for waking up so early to join and to contribute to this amazing cause that Quintessence has done here for the Ukraine.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Miguel, the two Stanleys, and thank you for the previous speakers.